What's up everyone, Train Freak here, and today we are going to continue our benchwork build for Brinkley. First we got to mark out where the studs are located. And then next we're going to mark out our grid, and I'm doing 16-inch centers. And we'll go ahead and start cutting our boards to fit. Now, since this is a 24-inch deep section, we have to factor 3/4 of an inch for each of the 1x4s, so we take off 1.5 inches, and that means those boards are 22.5 inches in length. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and drill out our pilot holes, and then we'll screw into those boards. I'm using 1 5/8 inch screws. And the reason why you want to drill your pilot holes first is so that way it doesn't cause your wood to split. Now I'm just screwing in the pieces that we're going to use for the grid. Those are those sections that I cut at 22.5. Now we can flip that over and we can set the other side on top. But before we do that, I want to go ahead and drill my pilot holes. And then I'm going to go ahead and get my screws set in. And then we'll just start working one side, and we'll work all the way to the other side. It's not good practice to do both ends and then work your middles. One side to the other side. And our grid is complete. And I'm just grabbing a couple of clamps. Now I had to be a little tricky here because I have a wire coming down on the outside of the wall, since this used to be a garage, and I do not want to cut that wire. So I had to cut a nick out in the back board. We'll go ahead and get this clamped. And I'm just double checking for my studs. Now these screws here, you notice they have a couple of washers on them, and this is what I'm using to screw the benchwork into the studs. The washers give an extra hold, mainly on the top screw. The bottom screw doesn't necessarily need those washers, but you really want the top ones to have it. And I'll also use some of those 1 5/8 inch screws to screw that section of grid to the next section of grid to the right. Now the screws that have the washers are 2 inches in length. Just double check and make sure everything's level. And then of course we got to make sure it's level going towards the front. Now we're going to measure out our distance for the last piece of grid. Just doing a test fit to make sure it works. And go ahead and cut all the rest of the pieces that I'm going to need to make this last section that's pretty small. Now we're going to mark where we're going to put our center brace for the grid. And I'm just drilling pilot holes again on all of my boards. And we'll go ahead and get that other side screwed in. And make sure that it fits in place, and it does, and we clamp it in just to hold it until we can get it all screwed in place. I'm going back with more of those 1 5/8 inch screws to screw it into that grid section we just put in. And then I'm also using those 2-inch screws with the washers to screw it into both the stud that's going through the sheetrock wall and the stud wall that I built last week. So we just want to make sure everything is level. And we're level, so next week we will do underbracing and plywood on top. Thanks for watching and have a great week.